Artistic endeavour on the island of Cyprus, identified with the great art of Constantinople, journeys along the same paths. Humble village craftsmen and artists, often in partnership with monks and hermits fleeing Constantinople as the great city fell into Ottoman hands, express their piety and dedication to the Church, demonstrating their love and worship of the Word and acts of God. The face of Christ and that of the Holy Virgin emerged from the exalted world of the Church and entered the Cypriot home and everyday life, and Byzantine tradition prospered triumphantly in the human world, conveying to man the holiness and greatness of God. Artists carried this tradition through into the centuries that followed, so that today it can manifest itself in the work of many contemporary Cypriot artists. Byzantium is the eastern expression of Christianity, extending throughout the oldest parts of the Roman Empire. Since the time of Constantine the Great, Byzantium persists and continues to persist right through to today. Christian Cyprus encounters Byzantium through the visit of Saint Helena. The island becomes Christian through the preachings of Saints Paul, Barnabas and Marcus, and Cyprus is deeply indebted to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. I was once asked by ecumenical patriarch Bartholomeus as to the importance of the inheritance of Byzantium in Cyprus. I answered that Cyprus received from the town of towns an amazing inheritance, but I stressed that two were the most important: the truth that resulted from the ecumenical synods as to the essence of man and world, and secondly, the Byzantine Orthodox liturgy that nourishes and gives intellectuality to every Cypriot throughout the ages. The Orthodox liturgy has a number of meanings. It refers to architecture and the important number of monasteries and churches in Cyprus. But it also refers to the icon, and more specifically to that of the Virgin Mary, the Mother of Christ. In Cyprus, we have one of the most important icons of the Virgin, that of Panagia Eleusa of the monastery of Kikos, that used to be the icon of the Byzantine Empire. This icon arrived in the 12th century, and ever since it is an icon that gives substance to the piety of the Cypriot folk. Most of our monasteries are dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Today's traditional and folk music finds its origins in the known Byzantine ichos, the sounds that have travelled from ancient Greece to Rome and hence to the Byzantine Empire. Byzantine music is considered to be a continuation of the music the ancient Greeks used to hear. Both belong to what we call today the Eastern music, but what really differentiates Eastern music from that of the West is the sentiment of harmolipi. It is a composite word of two important Greek words. The one is hara, meaning joy, and the other is lipi, meaning sorrow. This same passage from joy to sorrow is found today in our traditional music and from the Middle Ages to today, and one can trace it in our own songs, our folk songs, and in the well-known rembetika. I think that Byzantine music really influenced the traditional music here in Cyprus. The Byzantine art of Cyprus faithfully renders the deep piety and religious sense of the Cypriot people. Throughout its history, the island has been subjected to rigorous trials that persist to this very day, and has found in the teachings of Christianity refuge and solace, but also liberation and hope. The result was a great flowering of churches, places of prayer, pilgrimage and worship, and the island rightfully came to be known as the Island of Saints. Cyprus converted to Christianity at the time of the Apostles, and a number of splendid basilicas were erected to accommodate the increasing number of worshippers. It is clear from excavations carried out that all these basilicas were richly decorated with frescoes and mosaics. In 45 AD, Saints Paul and Barnabas arrived on the island from the Syro-Palestinian coast to preach the new religion and the Holy Gospel. For a number of years, from the 4th through to the 6th centuries, Cyprus bore witness to the presence of both the pagan and Christian religions. Aphrodite was still Urania, the celestial goddess, but next to her, the figure of the Mother of God was omnipresent. Rome was relegated to history. Christianity had come to stay.
Στην Κύπρο και στον ελληνικό χώρο γενικότερα, οι ψάλτες...
Both in Cyprus and in Greece, it is usually the priests, the chanters, that sing in the church. The same people with the unique deep voices also perform in public, and the way they sing traditional songs is definitely influenced by their church singing. And people appreciated this way of expression and participated in the church presence in everyday life. Take for instance the Cypriot singer Kyriakou Pelagia. When she sings, it is as though she is in church in the same manner. This clearly shows that our folk music has become deeply influenced by our church music. It is known that Cyprus was part of the Byzantine Empire, and a number of important monuments, not only religious ones, still exist and prove that Cyprus was an important part of the empire. It is through these monuments that we can trace the Byzantine culture, and it's only natural for a Cypriot artist to refer to these sites and monuments in the occupied areas of the island, and generally to our civilization, especially if he belongs to the generation that has witnessed the incredible loss and destruction of our cultural heritage after the Turkish invasion of 1974. It is only natural that he wants to be part of this culture. It is only natural that he tries through his art to save what there is to be saved. This is something common to us artists. It is not a feeling that belongs only to me. All artists who were creative in the 1970s and 80s, whether they were musicians, artists or poets, made a tremendous effort to save the remains of our culture and civilization. When we want to understand what Byzantium meant to Cyprus, all we have to do is take a glimpse at the wall paintings of the church of Arachas. See the scene of the Dormition of the Virgin in Asinu, and there we will understand that Byzantium offered us the true presence on earth of the world of heaven, the heavenly world that was made to fit our world, our everyday life, our way of being. Byzantine art is found in the castles of the Pentadactylus range, those of St. Hilarion, of Buffavento and Cantara. Byzantine art is found in our monasteries, that of Kikos being the oldest, the monasteries of Makaras from the 10th century, the church of Panagia Tuaraka, the church of Asinu, of St. John Lampadistis, of Panagia Truditissa, of the monastery of Aias Neophytus, and that of Chrysorio Giatissa.
Byzantium is present in Cyprus throughout the centuries. We do not refer to Byzantium as a particular moment in history that began and ended. We know it starts in the 3rd century and its presence is felt until this very day. And this is a particularity one feels with Byzantine art. It is omnipresent. It is part of our everyday life. It influences a huge amount of our time, and a fair amount of this time is dedicated to our arts. We can trace it, with the only exception of the Ottoman rule in Cyprus, from the 3rd century to the 20th or even the 21st century. Cypriot artists are aware of the art movements of Europe, especially those of the 20th century, as a lot of them study in European countries. Art in Cyprus, though, continues a very specific path. It develops both by following the currents of European art, but also keeps a firm ground through the presence of Byzantium and its ecumenality. The example of George Paul Georgiou, a self-taught artist from Famagusta, is striking. Through his art, one can see the presence of Byzantium in the Cypriot folk, in the way they stand, in the way they dress, in their manner of being, at every single occasion depicted in his paintings. Important works of art, as the descending of the cross or that of Aios Spiridon. In them, One can see that Gheorghiu can very well follow the European trends, but he chooses deliberately, however, to remain within the known, the living experience, the world of his own knowledge, which is no other but that offered to him through the Byzantine experience. The same can be said for the works of Diamandis as those of Canthos. Following their traces and recognizing the face in the work of Diamandis in the world of Cyprus, one can clearly state that Byzantine art not only is at the basis of their creations, but also persists in each and every work of art.
If one looks at Byzantium today, only two parts of the world maintain its existence. The one is Cyprus, the other is Mount Athos.